Okay. I think we're live. Neil, Scott, feels like assembly at school. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. My name is Takuno Lee. I'm the Festival Director of the Johannesburg International Comedy Festival. And with me are the lineup for the first ever Training Comics tour from my immediate left, Loyiso Madinga, Robby Collins, Schalk Bezuidenhout, and Neil Green. They will be able to talk later on. I'm not going to be doing all the talking for them. But just a quick intro from my side. So the Trending Comics, you know, for all those who might not know, is a lineup of comedians we feel are, you know, guys who are doing amazing work right now, the hot right now comedians in our minds, the comedians who we feel are well on their way to becoming, you know, really established superstars in the South African comedy circuit. And you know, it's the Trending Comics is actually a spin-off of the Johannesburg International Comedy Festival, in the sense that it's a show that's part of the festival, but this is our first opportunity to take the show on the road. And we've been very privileged and lucky that Tall Horse, who are our headline sponsor, came on board and basically gave us the opportunity to take this show on the road. So Trending Comics, starting next weekend, we're going to be in Cape Town at the Cape Town Comedy Club over 2 nights. Following weekend, we're going to be in Durban at the 031 Comedy Club in Morningside. And then on the weekend of the 3rd and the 4th of November, we're going to be right here at the Goliath Comedy Club in Johannesburg. And this Google Hangout essentially is almost as a precursor to the tour kicking off and giving you know, press, media, fans out there an opportunity to engage with the lineup and just chat about themselves and chat about the tour that's coming up. So that's the little bit up front from me, and maybe we can open the floor with some questions.
Well, my name is Percy, I'm freelance. Don't look so nervous. Well, I mean, I suppose the first question to start is to ask you to give us an insight into what makes Trending Comics a different comedy setup compared to all the other things that are going on in the country.
Okay, cool. I'll just repeat the question for people online who might not have heard. So yeah, the question is, what makes Trending Comics different to any other show? I think, and we were just chatting earlier this morning, and we're just saying, you know, in every comedy scene, there's always these talent search competitions about who's the unearthing new talent, you know, who's the next comedian, and so forth and so forth. And there's many of those kind of properties all over the world. And then at the same time, on the opposite spectrum, you've got all these big shows that celebrate the big comedians, the established acts. But there's never any properties that speak about the guys who are on the brink of breaking it into the big, you know, into the big time, but are not exactly, you know, guys who are green and starting off. The guys who are working hard and pushing every day, you know, to pursue their goals of becoming bigger and better. And we kind of feel like Trending Comics is that, you know, it's a property that encapsulates that section or that tier of comedians that are really working to break it and make it not only locally, but also internationally. And these guys that we all brought on for this tour are guys who are doing amazing things, you know, all over South Africa, all over the world. And I'm sure as we ask them questions, you'll hear some of the stuff that they've been up to. So in that way, we feel it is a very different property to anything else that's out there.
Yeah. I'm gonna take over and nobody has questions.
Yeah, so maybe if I can do this, I'm just gonna pass the mic down. I'll just ask the guys. I think a generic question for everyone, because I know the comedians and some of you will, but many people out there won't really know. So maybe if I can just hand over to the guys, just a very broad overview of who they are, their comedy, their journey, what they're up to, and that kind of thing. Guys?
Hi, I'm Robby Collins, and I'm from Durban originally. Moved up here in 2010. Actually, because of him, Tukundo was like, you have to move up because, as Neil knows, 9 years ago in Durban, there was nothing. This was a gig in Durban.
And after last night's rain in Durban, there is nothing.
There's no more comedy in Durban after the rain. So I think this is, well, I've been doing comedy for 9 years, and Durban now has a scene. Cape Town has a scene. Joburg's always had a scene, but Joburg was definitely a move that I had to make, like many comedians. But now, I think the cool thing with this tour, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about myself, but the cool thing with this tour is that we're going to cities that are doing really well with comedy. And I think apart from us showcasing our talents, I think a cool thing is interacting with comics in different cities and letting them know about the Joburg International Comedy Festival. To give them, bring attention to the festival and with the audiences. You know, like the way, I was thinking about it the other day, like the way people go to Daisies and Opie for a rock festival. Hopefully people also make that trip for a comedy festival, like next year, you know what I mean? Like people save for a rock festival. So that's what we like, people, it's a culture, yeah. So that's what we like with the Joburg International Comedy Festival. And also it brings other acts from around the world. And I was in New York recently and we realized that we always bamboozled by overseas things, thinking everything American or British is better. And it's not really true. Like this big name, but there's also a lot of shit. If I can be quite frank, you know what I mean? And we're not that far behind. So it's cool to be part of this.
Robby, we've got somebody online who just wants to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Who means more to you, Trevor or Nkosi?
Nkosi.
Yeah.
Nkosi Johnson. Oh, fuck. I don't know. Probably Nkosi Johnson. He gave us Vaseline.
Hi, my name's Schalk Bezuidenhout. Just two things first. Firstly, Trevor Noah, wow, what a comedian. Secondly, Torlos, what a wine. Amazing wine. If you haven't had it, just do yourself a favor. It's under 50 Rand. And normally, you know, wines under 50 Rand don't get the respect that I think they deserve. But Torlos, come to the gigs, there will be free Torlos at the gigs. It'll be like those hip hop parties where the guy's in a booth and he's pouring vodka into everyone's shots, but it'll be me with Torlos. So I started comedy in 2011. I'm originally actually from Joburg, well, Kempton Park, just to clear things up. It's not really Joburg, but we like to say so. From Kempton Park, and then I went to go study at UCT, and I started comedy in my first year at UCT. So I'd actually consider myself a Cape Town comedian, like the majority of my career has been from there. But I'm up in Joburg often. And yeah, I'm excited for this tour. I think all of us perform together regularly anyway, and we've all become friends through gigs together. Loyiso and I did a show at Grahamstown called Broken English. Robby and Loyiso have been on tour together. Me and Robby have been on tour together. So I think it's also just some, without sounding soppy, like friends, you know, doing a show together. What? Not my friend? Yeah, that's all from me.
Yo, so I started comedy. My name is Neil Green. I started comedy just after Robby, and then Robby left and came to Joburg. Not the first time we done that, cause like we were in Fairvale together. And then the song just left. Like I saw you one break time and you're like, this guy's here. And then you left Fairvale, then you left Joburg. And I great team was hard, yeah. Now but it was cool. Like Robby came up here. I stayed there in the wasteland, as you see at that time. It was crazy out there for that time. But now we moved along. Like we've reached a level in Durban comedy now of respectability where Sukunda actually would book me for something. You know? Yeah, that's amazing that we're in that space. And of these, I was up here on the stage. I'm probably the least known in terms of opening acts that people have been. We don't have been opening acts for. Yeah. But no, like I'm super excited about like these guys. Like I know you're also excited about the tour, but for you all it's work, it's more work. Like you all have been involved in. Like on something like on this scale for me, I am crazy excited for it.
But you know what happens?
No, it's my turn. I just can't say anything. Why are you so touched, bro?
Robby, you left me. I never you put. I think what's fun is that it's not work for us because after the first tour, I got to go on with you and Dylan, Olifant, and what's on it? Eugene Koza, Trevor, and that guy. Being with other comics who love it as much as you do, it's like the stage is not the whole tour. Like just hanging out is great. Like hanging out with people who love this thing as much as you do is blazing. And so for me, when Takunda called and said, this is the tour, this is the lineup, I was like, what, you gonna pay me to hang out with my friends? Yes. Free wine? What? No, we are friends. Yeah. So yeah, and for us, it's a great. We always love getting out there and sharing each other's fan base, which I think is a cool thing because the people who follow Robby might not know me, the people who follow Neil might not know Schalk, and they come to a show like this and they experience the other acts that they've never seen before. It's blazing. Like when we did that show, Broken English in Grahamstown, a lot of the fans were Schalk fans that that didn't know I existed because they don't watch SABC1. And but after the show, that people were like, "Oh shit, I didn't know you existed," and I enjoyed your half of the show just as much as I enjoyed Schalk's half of the show. And for us, that's just great to get. They did say that numerous times. Thanks, Schalk. So that for us is also fun to just reach new people, new audiences. It's a blessing. Yeah.
I think I just want to add one thing that, just touching on what Laurie said, I think another thing that also makes trending comics, in my mind, besides the whole tour aspect, which I feel like we need to start doing more of in this country. You know, you go to the UK, you go to the US, comedy tours are a dime a dozen. It's something that is part of the culture there. Whereas over here, I think we're still an emerging comedy market. So it's still new, but it's something that I feel should be getting done more, not just by us, but by promoters, producers out there, because it helps continue to develop our market. It's exactly what Loy was saying, like cross-pollination of audiences and all that kind of thing. But another thing, just to add about trending comics, what I also think makes it unique is that there was a temptation to take the shows to, theaters and other sort of more well-known comedy venues in that way. Whenever there's a tour, it's invariably in the big venues. But we're like, let's take comedy to where comedy is happening. And I think there's this emergence of these like sort of super comedy clubs in South Africa that are doing so much for the development of comedy in South Africa, where every single week those spaces are open to people who might be experiencing comedy for the very first time, and engaging with the culture for the very first time. And there's just like this amazing groundswell that's starting to happen at these clubs, where people are saying, I can either go watch a football match, I can go watch a movie, or I can go to a comedy club. And 5 years ago, that wasn't really an option. So we were like, let's take comedy to where the comedy is happening. Let's take comedy to the people. And in the Goliath Comedy Club, which I feel like one of the best comedy clubs I've ever been to, the same for the Cape Town Comedy Club that was rated as one of the top 10 comedy clubs in the world. And, O31 in Durban, Morningside, I think it's called S43. There's something amazing that's building. I just feel like it speaks to the tone of the tour in a different way to probably other shows would have. So I think also it's just like an opportunity to give kudos to those comedy clubs and what they're doing on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and saying we want to celebrate that as well.
Yeah, come on. Do this thing. One of the things that you mentioned is about this is about comedians on the cusp of a break. And you talk about the fact that comedy is happening in very local spaces where it's thriving. This means that when someone has to grow and make a national breakthrough, they have to make a lot of adjustments in terms of their material. Material that is, happening at a local space might not necessarily jive at national level, where the audience is much more diverse and have a different taste. Do you guys feel like as you break through to a more national audience, you have to make adjustments to your material in order to resonate at a more general level than the specificity of your locale?
I think I'll try and summarize for the sake of people online your question, so that the guys. So basically, the question is that obviously you guys perform primarily, in your local scene, but as you do things like these tours, or as you're on the cusp of becoming a national, comedian or a comedian with national profile, that there's a bigger need for you to adapt your material and adapt basically your direction as a comedian to become more relevant to a broader audience.
So I think one thing that being an SA comic does give you, like the positive and what makes it hard, is the audiences are so different. Culturally, language barriers, area to area. Durban people experience a different life than Joburg to Cape Townians, where you do a joke that kills here, and you think everyone will find it funny when you go to Cape Town, and they don't know what you're talking about at all. So as a SA comic, the more you do and the more you travel, the more you learn to adapt, and it becomes a strength that you have. Because, for example, we were doing Montreal together, and as a South African act, we get there and we do our act and we see, oh no, this is working here for this reason, the difference is here. And within 2 or 3 gigs, we've got a new 10 minutes or whatever it is that's killing there. And it's something that we have, because I've seen, like when we went to Switzerland together, and there was an American act who's brilliant, but she couldn't adapt, and they didn't get her. And night after night, she didn't change, because in America, you don't have that. So big, and so there's this big generic market that you can hit. And it's a strength that I think South African comics have. Whenever they go to a new place, it's just like, it's an adaptation you're on all the time. Like, okay, like for instance, in Montreal, they don't look at race the way we look at race. So when you start a joke, you go, black people, they're like, old people do that? That was a black thing. So the next time you tell that story, you just go, us people, when we're doing this thing, and they're like, yeah, that's us, all of us people, all of us human beings, even though they're all just white in Montreal. But it's definitely a strength we have. I think if you don't adapt in SA, I don't think you'll make it anywhere else, because it's the training ground for adaptation.
I think with all 4 comics, we all have traveled quite a bit, extensively in South Africa, and some of us overseas. And races even change in South Africa. Like a colored guy in Durban is totally different to a colored guy in Cape Town. So the languages, like colored people get upset with us because we don't speak Afrikaans in Cape Town. And we're like, even white people don't speak Afrikaans. But it's so different, and culturally, you know what I mean? Like, but the cool thing is everybody's performing. You perform in Grave Sound, that's a whole different crowd. That's an artistic crowd. It's more hipster. But it's a challenge at first, but then it also gives you material, because you see where you live in. Excuse me. You see where you belong in their world. Like when I was in America, I wasn't colored. I was a black guy. They didn't look at me as colored. You have to, like Roy said, you have to get rid of all that. And the people who do look colored are Hispanic. So it's a mindfuck in a big way, but it's also cool because you grow in these spaces. Like I'm sure the sets at the beginning of the tour are gonna probably change. By the time we get to Goliath, it's gonna be a different thing. But that's the cool thing about being on the road. And also what happens is when you're on tour with comics you respect and admire, they push you to do something different. And that's a cool thing when you're on the road and on tour with funny comics.
Yeah, I think you just, a sign of a comedian that's worth their, whatever. My English definitely will. What do you say? That's worth their salt. I wouldn't have gone with salt. Eh? I was going to say wet. Were they wet? It sounded more right. But were they salt? Like you write to what you see and where you are. So it's just a natural thing to, if you're in Cape Town, to write about what you're seeing around you, and then when you get to Joburg, you write like that again. So it's just a natural thing that happens, that you write about what you see. I went to London recently for shows, and without making a conscious effort to go, I want to open the first 10 minutes of the show with stuff about London, it just naturally develops that way, that, you know, by the fifth show, by the second show, now you've added another thing that happened that day, and by the fifth show, I added 10 minutes about London. So it's just naturally about going on stage every night and just talking about what you experienced in your day as well.
From my side, very quickly, I just want to say these all went from name-dropping people to name-dropping countries. These all going Canada, Switzerland, America. Now let me tell you about the bluff. Let me tell you about the bluff. Now, what I found, like, what safeguards me personally, like a lot from, like, yeah, you have to change it up 100%. But for me, I'm dressing up the language and the delivery and stuff like that, because my material is all personal stories. Like, all my material is basically personal stories. So it's just a way of, like, wrapping it up. That's why I was interested in listening to you earlier on when you were talking about when you were in London, listening to, like, how would I do that? Like, how would I dress it up in London? And I find out one day when Schalk asked me to open for you in London.
Let me repeat that question. So the question is basically, do you think, do these tours sort of attract a new audience and get people to start coming out more for comedy, or do people sort of wait for these kind of shows to happen and come out just for that and basically, you know, disappear? So every night we're on stage and we performing every night. There's always at least 5 people that never step foot in a comedy room. And comedy, as big as it is, it's also still growing so much. And I think people get confused with Trevor Noah's fans and comedy fans. Like, I've opened for Trevor for many years. Those people love Trevor. They don't come to, no, it's the truth. Those people have never been into a comedy club. They just know Trevor Noah. You know how this new opening. They don't know about comedy clubs. And they're blown away when they see you as an opening act, because they just know that Trevor's the only one doing it. Like, no, there's another 300 of us. Yeah, we're all there grinding. So it's definitely, like, to answer your question, it's definitely going to show people that there's other talents out there. Like what Roy said earlier, some person might see Schalk's face and just go for Schalk, and then you're going to realize there's other 3 talented guys. You know what I mean? And that might work for everybody. But it's definitely letting people know that there's comedy out there. And comedy right now is at a stage where guys might not be on TV, but they're making money and they're touring. You know, there's a guy, Skumba, I don't know if you've heard of him. I know you haven't. you don't look like this. Skumba's he sells out theaters throughout the country, but he's got his people, you know. But the more people do that, the more people learn about comedy, you know. And that's a great thing when you share the lineup with other people. You let people know that there's others out there. That's a cool thing. And the cool thing is, in every city we're using a local act. So Donovan Goliath will do Joburg, will host Joburg. Corbin Goldstone will host Durban, and Kurt Spudrak will host Cape Town. Also, I mean, from, you know, and I've been in the comedy game for the past 12 years, you know, initially as a manager, agent, and now sort of, you know, doing the festival and that. And coming back to your question about, You know, what is the impact of these tours on comedy audiences? The reality is that, I mean, you know, comedy is growing and growing exponentially, but has been for the past sort of 10 years, right? And every year there's new comedians on the scene, there's new rooms for people to perform in, there's new shows, there's new managers, agents. It's growing every single year. But the reality is that we're in the entertainment business. And when you look at the broader spectrum of the entertainment business, we're still not nowhere near what sport is as a genre, you know, and the kind of sort of business or opportunity that it provides, you know. We're nowhere near music, for example. So if you start looking at it like that, we still, as an entire industry, we still have so much work to do to develop the art form, to develop audiences, to develop rooms. And for me, anyone, regardless of whether they're doing something in competition to what I'm doing or whatever the case may be, the whole industry wins because we are developing the industry, you know? So I think in that respect, any opportunity that anyone gets to engage with comedy as an art form or, you know, as an experiential, you know, thing, it helps. Because that one person will like go back and say, wow, I went out last night to this comedy club. I didn't even know about it. I was just walking by and it looked like fun. But the next time they go, they're going with 2 of their friends or 3 of their friends. So in my mind, this and other things like this only stand to put us, you know, in better stead as an entire industry.
Yeah, because also what tours like this do with the diversity of the lineup is they help teach audiences of the spectrum of comedy. Because some people only have experience, like he said, Trevor, and they'll think if you're not doing accents and you're not talking about Zuma, they're like, why is this guy talking about his life? Why don't you sound like Indian people in Durban? Why? And until they experience like, oh my God, this one guy was talking about aliens. I've never heard about aliens, but I was dying of laughter. It shows we're literally at the point where we're still teaching audiences what comedy is. There are literally rooms where people don't know beyond their own world what comedy is, and even just what the decorum of a comedy room is. Like some people will just sit, they'll think it's theater, so sit quietly and they'll laugh politely. They don't realize it's a free space, let's just have a laugh, let's have fun, and you get off stage, you're like, I died on my ass today. And then you're walking out, people are like, you were amazing. I'm like, yeah, but it's like shit on stage. You are also quiet. So it's a big educational thing when you go out there, the more shows we do, the more diversity we show in comedy, it can only help.
I just wanted to find out what do you think is lacking in the industry right now to make it know what is something and what is lacking.
So the question is, what do we all think is lacking in the industry or holding the industry back from growing further or quicker than it is at the moment, right?
I actually like that question because it's not unrelated to the question that the lady just asked now before that. Because when you're talking about growth, the ideal situation for growth is not just to have new people coming to see new things, but we need a core. And there is cause, and Durban is probably the best example. Like when we go to Durban, I can name 20 people that are definitely gonna come to the show. We got that squad that that's their thing now. Not like how there's people that club and there's people that like they do play golf. I don't know what regular people do, but I'm saying like there's a comedy, there's like a crew that 100%. They might even come for both nights, like you know that's how they are. So when we're talking about growing the industry and what's gonna make the industry grow, I don't know. Those questions are kind of answering themselves. Like as we're going along, like even though we're so many years deep, we still like organically without this talk, we'll do that. I'm not saying how much it'll do it, but 100% there'll be growth because those 20 people that are going to come in Durban, that's the squad. But the other people that can fill up the room, they're going to join. Maybe we're going to get 5 more people. Maybe we're going to get 60 more people that now, I'm just talking about specifically Durban, will now be comedy fans that go watch all different types of comedy and want to experience new people when they come there. And if Durban's growing like that, if Joburg's growing like that, and someplace I haven't thought. So what you're talking about earlier, warm bars, maybe they're gonna be growing like that. Eventually, that's how the whole industry is gonna grow.
One bars is racist. No, but, yeah, I think. I think that a big thing that's holding a comedy back, apart from the audiences, I feel like the audiences need to be open-minded to who's on the poster and just trusting the art. Like when you trust the industry, like there's certain things. For example, the comedy cell in New York, you don't know who the person is. You just know that the show's gonna be good. You know, and that helps just helps sell tickets. And I think also comedy is new, and what happened was, I call it the pre-Trevor Noah phase. There were guys who were doing comedy, and then all of a sudden, black people came to the scene. And when I mean black, I mean people of color who were talented, and it shook them. So now what happens is people feel like because you came first doesn't mean you're better. I think people get mixed up with that. And I think it's sharing the industry. It's not a thing of if this goes well, the next tour that happens, we shouldn't be hating on those guys. It should be encouraging those guys and getting people to go see the show. So the more we share the love that people give us, the better it is for the industry. You know, you can't be the best at comedy. You can be the most popular, but I don't think you can be the best. And I think that's what we as comedians and the people in the industry need to understand and just share that kind of love, you know, like this does well, the next is gonna do well. It's not a thing, beef is for rappers. We don't need that type of shit. That's our personal job.
Yeah. Also, 20 people in Durban, you can name all 20 of them.
You know this, Robby.
So I think there's also like to take in some of the responsibility. I think comics are such private people. As much as we get on stage and we seem like super introverts, that we're very bad at self-promotion. I think also just getting out there and showing our faces on different platforms and stuff. We're not the best people at that. We don't want to. I mean, like there are people who have huge followings online because they're constantly putting out stuff and making short videos, which us comics don't do. We're like, just come to a show and enjoy that. And I think that's definitely a flaw in our side. Because we're not here for celebrity. I think comedians don't do it for celebrity. We're just like, if you like comedy, come and I'll do it really well for you. We're not out there going, and today on my boat, it was great. We're like, no, I'm just on my boat because I want to be away from this one family. Yeah, because also the more famous you get, the harder it gets. You just want so there's definitely space for us to learn how to promote ourselves in a way that's conducive to the industry. Because some people may want to see comedy, but we're not shouting out and going, we're coming to your town and na. Whereas like, on the page of the newspaper, so you can see it, please come to the thing, it's only $100. If you want to pay, I don't know. So I think there's definitely a space for good PR for the industry. But also, I think the people who own the media should trust comedians more. I think there should really be more trust with comedians because as far as content creation and people who can get the job done, comics are really good. There should be more comics on TV, there should be more comics on radio, there should be more comics, being given other platforms because we do this for the love and we really want it and we do it to always be good at it and not just to be seen. It's not enough for us to be seen. We're not rappers, we don't just pitch up at a place, we look cool and then we leave. We want to, if we're at the place, we're like, okay, let me do comedy, let me do it really well so these people love this thing that I do. So, yeah.
No, I think just from my side, and maybe more from the business side of things, in terms of what's holding us back from growth, what's happening on the front end, and I want to put the front end in terms of the comedians being out there on stage doing what they do, we are flying in that respect. I don't think, there's any doubt about the level, the quality of South African comedy, it is like insanely higher. So I don't think it's the comedians or the artists are at fault in that respect. I think a lot of the, most of the problems are happening in the back end, and they're twofold for me. And to touch on what Laura said, for me, there's two problems. One, from external, outside of the industry, brands, platforms, media, institutions, everybody's looking at comedy and seeing how it's doing, but people are not investing enough in comedy, in the sense, and not investing necessarily that just putting their money behind it, but in terms of trusting comedy and being able to say, I can put my brand alongside these acts or that act and trust that I'll be okay. And look, comedy is still a new thing relatively, from that point of view. But I do feel that if we, and at this point, I want to also just mention, like Tall Horse, for example, without Tall Horse, this tour would not be happening as much as we really wanted it to happen. But Tall Horse is a brand that is invested in comedy and trusted in comedy, and comedy has done well for them as a brand, For example, they've done all this content and commercials with Schalk, and the ads have been amazing, and they've had great traction on the ground. And they, as a brand, are like, hang on, this comedy thing is actually amazing, it's doing well, and people respond to it. So to a large extent, when we came to them for the tour, they were like, we're gonna back it, we're happy to put our name to it, and now the tour is happening. And in my mind, if we started having more and more institutions, brands like Tall Horse also starting to trust comedy, as Loyiso was saying, and back it, we would be able to take even more comedy out there to the people. So that's the one thing. Then from an industry perspective, I think for a long time, comedy was this small thing happening in the corner, And as Robby mentioned, when sort of things opened up, post-apartheid type, and the comedy game opened up to a broader audience, things changed. But people carried on with almost like in pockets, trying to this is what we're doing in comedy, and we want to preserve that, and we want to protect that. And if anyone else comes, it's gonna sort of tarnish on what we're doing. Actually, because of how sort of small we still are as an industry and still growing, we need to be doing the opposite of that. Opening up, we're all on the same side. So for me, people say, well, what if somebody comes and starts a festival, in Pretoria or in Johannesburg? I'm like, actually, that's a good thing. Because it means we're opening it up even more. We're opening up comedy. It makes competition that much harder, but actually, in the bigger picture, it's a better thing. So I kind of feel like, from an industry perspective, all the people behind the scenes, producers, promoters, managers, agents, if we started thinking more like we all have an obligation collectively to open the market up and start having that mindset and start saying, the UK, the US, what are they doing? What have they done for years and years to become where they are? We can get there, but not as a single agency or a single promoter. It's a collective effort, So that's, in my mind, that mindset needs to shift, and I think it will just take us to the next level. Questions?
There's one from online, and it's for Scott. Where do you get your outfits, and when are you going to start your own Instagram account for it?
The question from online was, Schalk Bezuidenhout, where do you get your outfits, and when are you going to open up an Instagram for them?
I have an Instagram.
Just for your outfits.
And I'm not naked in them. My outfits are displayed for everyone to see. So I'm assuming they're referring to the jerseys. The jerseys actually, this I got from Adidas when they still gave me stuff. But, let's just say the emails bounce back now. All of a sudden, that address has gone quiet. So it's because persona comes up a lot in comedy. Like, what's your persona? I try to keep it to who I am in real life. A lot of people think that the jerseys, I walk out the house for a show and I'll put on the jersey because I'm gonna go do a show. But that's just what I wear to keep warm.
Strange, but
and I think in terms of your persona, like it's a thing that develops over years. Like the jersey thing wasn't me sitting down going, I'm gonna plan a persona, I'm gonna take jersey. Like it was just like, I bought a jersey, I liked it, it developed. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but then I just bought more, and now it's sort of become a thing on its own. I mean, even like Robby's persona has become sort of. So he's still working on his persona, but you know, like I mean, it's quite like rock and roll meets skater, but like Robby also said, it's not a thing that is like, man, I'm going to be the sort of rock and roll skater dude. Like, am I kind of going? Never mind. Anyway, so to answer your question, at Schalk Bezuidenhout, that's my Instagram. Just go there.
This one is for Neil. I see Neil likes his soccer. Does he have a fantasy league, and who's on top?
Neil, you like your soccer. You have a fantasy league, and who's on top?
Yeah, that's a painful question that you're asking me now, because I do love my football, and I'm you know what? It's hard to say this and not boast. So let me just lean into it. I am the reigning fantasy league champion of my fantasy league, and I'm also bottom now at the moment. So
Who's on the league? The 20 people from
you know what, Robby, you really want to talk about the 20 people? 20 people, and Robby said, I'm sure one of them is named Candace. Do you know how many girls named Candace are having WhatsApp arguments with their husbands now? Because you said that. Do you know how many? Yeah, but I'm not on top. I'm done. I'm done this year.
In my fantasy comedy league, Robby's on top, and I'm on the bottom. Next question.
We're still not friends.
Sure. My name is Richard. My question goes to Kunda. I just want to find out that given the rules of comedy in SA, and then we came up with this lineup, which is great. But why decided to give the sister who's on the line?
No, so just to repeat the question, you're saying that this is great, it's a great lineup, it's a great initiative, but why there are no female comedians on the lineup, right? So I think for me, and this is a question, or this is a thing that, you know, we grapple with all the time, you know, just where's the female representation on lineups, on shows, and so forth. So for me, there's two things to it. I think on the one hand, and this is not just a local problem, it's a global sort of like challenge, you know, for any comedy scene, is that there's always far less female comedians on the scene than their male counterparts. And I think also comedy is an art form, you know, just in the sort of patriarchal society that we live in today. It's so much harder for female comedians to be able to sort of say the things and do the things on stage that their male counterparts can do. And that's just the reality. You know, guys get away with so much more, not even on stage, but just in life in general. So it's a patriarchal sort of element that has sort of spilled over into comedy, you know? And when you see a female comedian who gets on stage and smashes it, and she is amazing, she has had to work probably twice, 3, 4 times harder than everyone else in the lineup just to be able to get there, 1, and 2, get to the level she's at. You know, so it's much harder. So the reality is that that ends up being the ratio, that there's always far less female comedians. Other thing is that it also then means that we have an obligation to develop or to support female comedians who are just trying to get into the mix or get to high levels. And it's something that we all need to take on, you know, just because of that dynamic. But at the same time, for me, I'm also caught in a quandary a lot of the time. And look, you know, in terms of female representation or female comedians at the Johannesburg International Comedy Festival, for example, we don't have an issue there. We're finding comedians from all over the world and locally to program. And we even had a show where it's an all-female lineup as part of the festival, and it's something that we have done from the very onset. But there's also a part that says that at the same time, I also feel that it's also irresponsible just to find a female comedian and put them on the lineup for the sake of having a female comedian on the lineup. I kind of feel that's actually more patronizing in many respects. I think the job is to actually identify talent, support it, but when they're at a stage where they're like deserving or they're comfortable at a certain level, then you have them on the lineup. And you know the great thing about that is that once they get off stage, you're not saying, oh, that female comedian was also funny. You're like, oh wow, Angel had an amazing set, or Celeste killed it tonight. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're deserving, they're there for the right reason. So it's a balance, you know, it's almost a balancing act that we have to perform. And it just so happens that this being the first one, it's just because there's no female comedians, it's not saying they aren't any out there. It's just that this is the lineup that we had for the first one. And this is the one that worked for what we're trying to create going forward. And you will find when we do training comics tours in the future, there'll be and I can't wait for the day when there's 4 female comedians here. You know, and you might be asking the question, so where are the guys? You know, that kind of, so, yeah.
Just from a comedian's perspective, like, it's already a tough industry for anyone to get into, right? And then, like you said, it's girls don't get away with certain things that guys can say. But it's in terms of numbers, it's not even like guys aren't letting girls in. It's very few women even try it. I'm like, and we're fans of comedy, so if someone is great, we just like, that person's great. But literally on a night out, we were at Kitchener's last night, how many female acts were there? None. There's just people who came to perform, and that's how it's just that on a numbers level, there are already so few women who would try. And so if you look at the ratio of a good comedian, how many bad comedians there are, the fact that there's so few women even trying, of those even trying, there's going to be so few who are even good. And not just that women aren't funny, the numbers game is not even there on their side. And then people fall off, and there's enough proof, obviously, that it's not a sex thing being funny. Celeste Dooley is insane. She's now in LA just killing it. And we're not going, whoa, that one female comedian, she's got balls. It's like, no, she's just a comedian. You know, it's like the doctor, you're not going, no, she's got boobs, she won't know what to do with my man chest. It's like it's a qualified person who's great at the job. So we're hoping to see more female comedians, because I think we also learn different things, like seeing Gilly Apter, who's a new act, and she just brings a whole new dynamic to comedy. Kate Punchak, she's new, she brings a whole new thing to comedy. So we're also excited to see new comedy. We see each other's jokes all the time, and we're like, okay, Neil, we get it, you're colored from the bluff. Jesus. Enough.
I was going to say, Tukuli answered that very well. I don't know, out of the say there's no more women, man.
Okay, guys, I think there's 2 more questions, huh? Yeah.
When I think comedy clubs, I think hamburgers and beer. How does the wine come into it? Tell us about their relationship and other brands that are plugging in to make this a success.
Okay. Yeah. So question was, when you think comedy, you think?
Hamburgers and beer.
Hamburgers and beers.
You know.
And then how did the wine, how did
and who are
the relationship and who are the other partners? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm really glad you actually mentioned that, because for a long time, comedy was an underground, gritty, dingy kind of thing, you know? People are drunk, it's the place you're paying $10 to get in, the menu's probably burgers and chips and, you know? And it was that for a very long time, like any underground thing, you know what I mean? But I kind of feel like just where we're sitting right now is very symbolic of how far comedy's come, you know? In the sense that almost as if either the comedians as a collective, the industry, we picked up this thing, we cleaned it up, we polished it up, and we're like, okay guys, here's the thing. That dingy, dirty thing is now cleaned up, and we're doing this thing properly, you know? You come to the Goliath Comedy Club, you're in Narrows Arch, you know what I mean? The place is extremely well done. And this is where comedy is now. So we've moved on from the burgers and chips. There's still places that still do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But now there's all those tiers, of comedy. I mean, Trevor Noah performed on this very stage, while he was warming up for his big tour a few months ago, and even he, his vibe is like, this is a comedy club like any that I could perform in the world, So we've moved. And then in terms of a wine brand, I think, comedy is about good times. It's about laughter. It's about being open-minded and having, a good laugh about the world around us, and with good times, especially as South Africans, we like to have a drink, and be merry and forget our issues at work or issues at home or, whatever hang-ups we have. So I kind of feel like, something like,
we just want to get fucked! I think it's a good collaboration because also with wine is also seen as like this snooty thing. It's not. It's a beverage like any other. Come have a glass of wine and have a laugh with us. It's a very simple connection. It's good times on stage, good times for the audience, and when a brand can see the simplicity of that kind of congruency is great. I just want to say congruency. Thank you.
I mean, and I think also another thing specifically about Tall Horse is also a wine that doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, that is their brand narrative out there. They're like, so many wines are so like uppity and pretentious, and you need to know how to taste it and whatever. And Tall Horse, like, guys, just get a good wine, open it up and drink it, have a good time, I mean, some of Scott's Tall Horse wine ads, he's drinking wine out of a coffee mug, And that's the sort of the narrative of the brand is also like, we're not a brand that take ourselves seriously. We're a brand that wants to have fun. And what better to, to align with comedy, and just further extend that into the broader market. So it's a relationship we feel is like seamless, and there's a lot of congruence. There we go. This is the last question.
Last question. We're heading up to the festival next year, and this is a one stop on the journey towards the festival. What else are you planning?
Okay, well, I think to a large extent, we're doing the Johannesburg International Comedy Festival for the third time next year, 22nd to 24th of March. And in many ways, what excites us about this Trending Comics Tour is that, like Robby was saying earlier, it's like a precursor to the festival, and it gives people a taste of the festival and audiences outside of Johannesburg as well. So in many ways, this is sort of setting the tone and starting the marketing rollout for JICF 2018. And in terms of other activities, primarily this tour is our core focus for the rest of the year, and then we're building up to the festival next year. But maybe even before I sign off in that respect, maybe just one line from each, not one line, but just a bit from all the guys that beyond the tour, and I actually, just on behalf of people watching, beyond the tour as an act, what can sort of the South African comedy industry, the international comedy industry expect from you in the next year, in terms of what you're doing as an act, the kind of things that you're up to?
Yeah, it's a tough one. My new one-man show, Jersey Boy, is starting tonight at the Papa Theatre in Mabuneng. Thursday, Friday, Saturday is sold out, but there are still tickets left for tonight. So go on to Papa's website and get your tickets. Then I'm in Cape Town with the same show, Jersey Boy, next week at the Baxter Theatre, 19 and 20 October, and tickets for that on CompuTicket. And then also Durban at the Durban Jewish Center on the 28th. Wait, I'm almost done. It's the last day. 28th of October, also on CompuTicket. You just search Jersey Boy, you will find that there's no other Jersey Boy happening in South Africa. That's what you can expect from me, Jersey Boy, my new one-man show. Thank you.
Okay. My old show, Born Freeish, is available at Musica and TakeLove.com, and will be available on my website, LoyisoMadinga.com, for download for only $5 within the month. But I'm working on a new show, as I think we're always working to make new and better stuff. working on new shows, so platforms like this help us develop shows like that. Hopefully next year, come out with a new hour. And yeah, let's have fun. Let's, Loyiso.com.
I've got 2 more cities for my Son of Carol tour, and I'm in Joburg end of November at the new Goliath Comedy Club, the Bannister in Braamfontein. And then I'm also the 24th, I'm in Nelspruit at that casino, I don't know the name. And I just want to say I'm very grateful to have Trace on board with us. I always wanted to be on the same channel as the Liz.
I also just forgot to say that my old second language is also available at Musicals and takealot.com. Buy the DVD. Thank you.
Yeah, so as far as I go, after training comics, I'll probably be playing a lot of video games. So if you want to add me for multiplayer training, no, but seriously, I'm back in Joburg in December. I don't want to say anything now, but keep follow the page and whatever. I'll let you know. I mean, I'm doing small, tiny mini tour overseas places and all. Just Joburg. I'll be back here in December, but other than that, this is me for the year. So.
Sweet. 1 free-ish on DVD.
Just a final question on my side. Question go to Madinga. Since you got a 12 hours and trade on board, are they going to segue into the Joburg International Festival next year?
Okay, question is, we've got Tall Horse and Trace on board. Are they going to segue into the festival? Well, that's the aspiration and that's the hope, right? But I kind of feel like it's the first tour. It's the first time that we're working with both brands, and they have shown a lot of trust and faith in us to do this tour. And my team and I and everyone involved, our thing is that let's hit this thing out of the ballpark and do the best job we can. And at the end of that, you know, if Tall Horse or Trace or anyone else out there is like, you know, these are people we want to work with, and this is a brand that we want to work with, or this comedy thing is something we want to be aligned with, then, you know, we move on to the next step. But we're not trying to think too far. We need to just deliver the product and put it out there the best way we can. And hopefully, you know, they join us not only for the short term, but for the long term. And in my ideal world, this time next year, we'll be doing another Trending Comics tour as well. So hopefully we're able to sort of create a good opportunity for us to do that on this tour. So I think we need to wrap everything up. I think from my side, first of all, I just want to thank all the acts. Neil Green flew up from Durban this morning. Schalk lives in Cape Town, works everywhere, including Joburg. Robby Collins, Loyiso Madinga, the lineup for the first Trending Comics tour. Also, I must mention again, so besides the 4 that you see on stage, the hosts for the tour will be Kurt Schoonright next weekend in Cape Town. And then the tour rolls out to Durban the following weekend. Will be hosted by Calvin Goldstone, one of the most amazing acts we have in this country. And then Donovan Goliath is going to be hosting the Joburg leg on the 3rd and the 4th of November. If you go to trainingcomics.co.za, you'll be able to see all the details, where you can buy tickets. But yeah, tickets are already flying, so we encourage people, you know, to get their tickets and not miss out. I think it's a really unique show. I think we're gonna have fun. I think the acts are gonna have fun. And we're excited that Tall Horse and Trace are with us. And hope it's, I know it's gonna be a fantastic show and a fantastic experience. But yeah, so thank you so much to everyone who's here. Thank you all the media, press, and everyone who joined online. Thank you to Kate Goliath and the Goliath family who are hosting us today. And yeah, hope to see you on the road, guys. Thank you. Cheers.